The Terran Dominion had ruled the stars for thousands of years. Their banners of conquest stretched across whole sectors, painted on broken worlds that had fallen to their endless fleets. They were not one single species, but a union of many alien civilizations bound together by ambition, fear, and the promise of power. At the head of this mighty alliance stood the High Overlords of Terran Prime, who commanded countless warships and controlled hundreds of colonies. For the Dominion, conquest was routine. It was no longer war in the true sense, but a process, clean, calculated, and predictable. Their fleets were so vast that resistance never mattered. When they set their eyes on a world, that world had no chance. Smaller species begged for mercy. Some surrendered immediately, hoping to survive under Dominion rule. Others fought back in desperation, but their weapons were primitive, their fleets weak, and their courage quickly crushed. The Dominion had grown arrogant. To them, every new frontier species was the same, fragile, naive, and hopelessly behind in technology. None had ever matched the might of their armadas, but change was on the horizon. The first reports, in a quiet council chamber aboard the Dominion's war station Carnath Prime, the High Overlords met in a circle of cold silver thrones. The room hummed with the energy of holographic displays showing maps of the galaxy. A scout admiral knelt before them, his reptilian body trembling slightly. His ships had ventured into a distant frontier sector, where strange signals had been detected. He spoke with care, for he knew how easily failure angered the overlords. "My lords," the scout began, "a young species has been found. They call themselves humans." The name echoed through the chamber. The overlords leaned forward, their eyes narrowing. "Humans?" one of them hissed. "Describe them." The scout explained that humans had only recently expanded beyond their home system. They were fragile compared to most galactic species, soft-skinned, lightly built, and with lifespans shorter than the elder races. Their colonies were few, their fleets small, and their weapons, by Dominion standards, still primitive. "They are spread across barely a handful of systems," the scout continued. "They mine their moons, they build small starships, but they are no true power." The overlords chuckled. "Another frontier race, another simple conquest. Do they have allies?" asked Overlord Dreth, a massive being with metallic scales covering his body. "None that we have seen," the scout replied quickly. "They stand alone. Their people are divided into governments and councils, but none have strength enough to threaten us. They are at best a curiosity." The decision for a moment, silence filled the council. Then the overlords began to speak one after another, their voices heavy with pride. "Another weakling race," sneered one. "Let us strike quickly and take their worlds." "They may serve as workers in our mines," suggested another. "Their numbers could be useful." Overlord Dreth raised a claw. "We must not waste time. Our fleets are ready. The Armada will move to the frontier. We shall break them before they even learn the meaning of war." The decision was swift. The Dominion always acted with speed. Once a new species was discovered, they never allowed it to grow strong. It was better to crush them early before they became a threat. The order was given. The largest fleet in the sector, Armada Carveth, was summoned. It consisted of hundreds of cruisers, destroyers, and carriers, each bristling with weapons that had shattered dozens of civilizations before. The alien admirals promised a swift victory. They laughed as they studied the reports of human technology. A few primitive railguns, slow ships that could barely reach faster than light speeds, defenses that would crumble under a single Dominion salvo. To them, this campaign was not war. It was routine. The Armada assembles at the edge of Terran-controlled space. A massive mustering ground came alive. Shipyards blazed with light as the Dominion's Armada prepared for departure. War drums, deep resonant signals broadcast across the fleet, echoed through the void. Thousands of alien crew members hurried aboard their vessels. The Dominion was made up of many races, scaled warriors from Dravak, insectoid tacticians from Creel, and pale-skinned overseers from Terran itself. Though different in form, they all served the same purpose: expansion of Dominion power. The fleet's flagship was the dreadnought Cravalon, a monstrous warship larger than most human cities. Its hull was covered in black armor, and its weapons could shatter moons. At its bridge, Admiral Zirin stood tall, his eyes glowing faintly with cybernetic implants. He had led dozens of campaigns, and not once had he been defeated. He looked upon the holographic map of human space with little interest. To him, it was already conquered. "Set our course," Zirin commanded. "We will reach their frontier within 3 cycles. By the 4th, their resistance will be ash. By the 5th, their homeworld will kneel." The officers saluted. None doubted him. The arrogance of power during the long journey through faster-than-light corridors the alien crews boasted. They compared humans to other conquered species. "They are like the Vreni," said one Creole tactician. The Vreni thought they were clever too, but their ships broke apart under a single strike. "Or the Halvek," another replied with laughter. "Those creatures begged for peace the moment our carriers entered orbit. They did not even fire back." The Dominion soldiers laughed louder. To them, humans were already defeated. Some even placed bets on how quickly the campaign would end. A week, 2? None believed it would take longer. Whispers of curiosity, yet not all were so sure. Among the Armada's ranks were scientists and observers, assigned to study new species for weaknesses. One of them, a small insectoid named Threx, studied the scattered reports about humans. He found something odd. Humans had advanced quickly. In less than a few centuries, they had gone from primitive combustion engines to faster-than-light travel. Their technology was not elegant like that of the Dominion, but it was inventive, adaptive, and strangely efficient. "They learned too quickly," Threx whispered to himself, examining the data. "They are not like others. There is hunger in them." When he shared his concerns with his superiors, they dismissed him. "Every primitive species looks strange before conquest," they said. "Do not waste your thoughts on these creatures. They will break like all the rest." Still, the unease lingered. The frontier approaches. At last, the Armada neared human space. From the dark void, the stars of the Sol frontier glittered in the distance. The first human signals were intercepted, broadcasts of music, voices, and simple data from colonies. To the aliens, they sounded weak, naive, and unguarded. "Pathetic," Admiral Zirin muttered. "They do not even know we are coming. They sing while doom approaches." The Cravalon and its escort of cruisers entered the frontier system cautiously, their sensors sweeping for human ships. The first targets were small outposts on the edges of asteroid belts. These would be destroyed quickly to test the humans' reaction. But then came the unexpected. The alien scouts detected a massive human ship orbiting near a distant planet. It was unlike the others, larger, stronger, built not for mining or transport but for war. Its shape was sleek yet solid, its heat signatures immense. "What is this?" Admiral Zirin demanded, narrowing his glowing eyes. The scouts hesitated. "A warship, my lord. Larger than we predicted, perhaps. A new design." Zirin studied the readings with disbelief. A young race like humans should not have built such a ship. It was too soon, too advanced. And yet, the evidence was clear. The humans had a battleship. The shadow of something greater. The Cravalon's bridge fell silent. The laughter that had filled the fleet during the journey faded into unease. Still, arrogance prevailed. "One ship does not matter," Zirin said coldly. "We are hundreds. It will burn like all the rest." Yet in his heart, a small spark of doubt had begun to grow. He did not like surprises. And this human battleship was a surprise he had not planned for. He gave the order, "Prepare the Armada. We will crush this vessel first. Let it be an example to the humans of what awaits them." And so, the Dominion Armada, vast and terrible, prepared to face a single human warship. None of them yet knew that this encounter would change everything. For the first time in centuries, the Dominion was about to meet resistance unlike any they had ever seen. The humans were waiting. The humans had always known that the galaxy was vast, but they did not know how dangerous it was until the first alien signals appeared on their borders. For decades, humanity had expanded slowly into the stars, building colonies on nearby worlds, mining asteroids, and constructing trade stations. They were new to space compared to the older civilizations, but their growth had been fast, so fast that even their own historians were amazed. On Earth, leaders from many nations had argued for years about defense. Some believed humanity should focus on peace, on building trust with any species they might meet. Others, more cautious, argued that the galaxy would not be gentle. They feared that sooner or later, humans would meet a power that would not welcome them. That fear had led to the creation of something extraordinary. The birth of the Resolute. The HSS Resolute was humanity's first true battleship. It was not just another starship with bigger guns. It was a project born of fear, hope, and desperation all at once. When explorers had found traces of ancient alien ruins on the edge of human space, scientists worked day and night to understand them. The ruins were old, broken, and silent, but fragments of technology remained. They hinted at weapons that bent gravity, engines that folded space, and shielding stronger than anything humans had ever imagined. Most of it was beyond human understanding. But even fragments were enough. Engineers studied every piece, every strange alloy and half-broken device, and slowly, they found ways to adapt it. They did not copy the ancient technology perfectly, but they learned just enough to build something new. The result was the Resolute. It was the largest vessel ever constructed by human hands. More than 4 kilometers long, with armor thick enough to withstand meteor strikes, it was armed with rail lances that could fire slugs at near-light speed, and gravity cannons that twisted enemy shields apart. Its engines were untested prototypes capable of sudden bursts of terrifying acceleration. Yet for all its power, the ship was still experimental. The systems were complex, the weapons risky, and no one truly knew how it would perform in battle. Some leaders had argued against building it at all, saying the resources should go to a fleet of smaller ships instead. But in the end, the project had gone forward, and the Resolute had been stationed on the frontier, far from Earth, to stand watch over the unknown. Captain Elias Vorn. At the center of the ship stood Captain Elias Vorn. He was a man in his late 40s, with sharp eyes and a calm voice that carried quiet authority. He had served in the space fleet for most of his life, leading patrols, escort missions, and skirmishes against pirates. But this was different. He had been chosen not only for his skill but for his steadiness. The Resolute was not just a ship, it was a symbol. If it failed, if it was destroyed in its first battle, the dream of human defense might collapse. Captain Vorn knew the responsibility that rested on his shoulders. He walked the bridge with measured steps, greeting his crew with nods, speaking in steady tones, and never showing fear, even when he felt it. The crew respected him deeply. They were a mix of veterans and young recruits drawn from every colony and nation. Some were here out of duty, others out of curiosity, and many out of sheer pride. They knew they were serving aboard something historic. Uneasy Skies life aboard the Resolute was tense. For weeks the crew had trained in the frontier system of Helios 9, practicing maneuvers, calibrating weapons, and testing the strange hybrid systems of the ship. There were constant malfunctions, gravity coils overheating, targeting systems failing, and engines stuttering during jumps. But the crew adapted. Humans were used to machines breaking, and they were used to fixing them. Engineers joked that the ship was half miracle, half scrapyard, but it worked. News of strange alien signals had already reached them. Scouts had reported unusual movements beyond the border, whispers of something vast approaching. The rumors spread quickly among the crew. Some dismissed them. Others grew nervous. But none knew the truth, that a full Dominion armada was already on its way. The first encounter it began with the arrival of alien scouts. Sensors lit up as 2 small Dominion cruisers entered the system, their black hulls cutting across the void like blades. They moved with confidence, scanning the human colonies without fear. The Resolute went to battle stations. Sirens echoed through the halls, red lights flashing. Crew members strapped into their positions, hands trembling as they prepared for something none of them had ever faced before. Real war against a true alien enemy. On the bridge, Captain Vorn stood tall. "Target the nearest vessel," he ordered calmly. "Let them be the first to learn what humanity has built." The rail lances charged. Massive slugs were loaded into the electromagnetic barrels. Energy built up, vibrating through the ship's spine. The crew held their breath. Fire. The slug tore through space at impossible speed. It struck the Dominion cruiser with such force that the ship split apart instantly, its hull folding inward like paper before exploding in a silent flash of light. The second cruiser panicked, firing wildly, but the shots glanced off the Resolute's shields. Another rail lance fired, and the second alien ship was gone. The crew erupted in disbelief. 2 alien warships destroyed in seconds. They never stood a chance, whispered Lieutenant Kara, the tactical officer. Captain Vorn said nothing. He only stared at the burning wreckage drifting in the void. He knew this was only the beginning, the weight of victory. The battle was short, but its meaning was heavy. For the first time, humans had faced a galactic power and won. Yet Vorn did not celebrate. He knew the scouts were only the start. They will send more, he told his officers quietly. Those ships will not have been alone. We must be ready. Messages were sent back to Earth and the colonies, but the distances were vast. Reinforcements would take weeks, perhaps months to arrive. For now, the Resolute stood alone at the edge of human space. The crew felt both pride and fear. Pride that they had destroyed 2 enemy ships so easily. Fear that a larger fleet would soon follow. The Armada comes 3 days later. Sensors picked up the truth. A fleet was coming. Not 2 ships, not 10, but hundreds. The Dominion Armada had arrived. The crew watched the displays in silence, eyes wide as the readings poured in. Cruisers, carriers, destroyers, dreadnoughts, an entire storm of warships moving together with chilling precision. They outnumber us 100 to 1, whispered Kara. On the bridge, Captain Vorn's face remained calm, though his chest felt heavy. He had expected more ships, but not this many. He knew the truth. If the Resolute fell here, humanity would have no defense left. But retreat was not an option. Behind him lay human colonies, families, children, and futures. We stand here, Vorn said firmly. We do not run. This ship was built for this very moment. Preparing for the impossible, orders spread through the ship. Engineers rushed to reinforce shields and reroute power. Weapons crews prepared the rail lances and gravity cannons. Pilots readied the smaller escort craft. The crew moved with determination, though fear gripped their hearts. They had seen what their ship could do, but could even the Resolute stand against an Armada? In the mess halls, whispers filled the air. Some prayed quietly. Others told stories of Earth, of oceans and mountains, as if holding on to memories of home. Yet there was also a spark of defiance. If they want our worlds, one engineer muttered, tightening a bolt, they'll have to fight for every inch. The calm before the storm. The Armada drew closer. Alien ships filled the dark like a storm of shadows. On the bridge of the Cravalon, Admiral Zarin watched the single human battleship with cold disdain. His officers expected him to order an immediate strike. But he hesitated just for a moment, studying the strange design of the Resolute. One ship should not worry us, he said. And yet, something about it feels wrong. Still he gave the command. Advance. Test their defenses. Let us see if this human vessel is truly as dangerous as the reports claim. Back on the Resolute, alarms rang once more. Captain Vorn looked around his bridge, meeting the eyes of his officers. This is it, he said quietly. The moment we prove that humanity is not prey. Whatever happens today, the galaxy will remember it. The crew nodded, fear replaced by determination. The first alien wave approached. The Resolute's weapons lit up, glowing with energy. The battle for humanity's future was about to begin. The dark emptiness of space was silent. But in that silence, 2 great forces stared at one another. On one side stretched the Dominion Armada, a vast ocean of warships glowing with cold light, their black hulls bristling with weapons. On the other side, alone but unyielding, stood the HSS Resolute, its armored frame gleaming faintly in the starlight. It was a sight that would one day be remembered across the galaxy. One ship against hundreds. The enemy advances on the bridge of the Resolute. Alarms pulsed and the crew worked quickly, screens filled with red symbols, each one marking an approaching enemy vessel. The Dominion ships moved in perfect formation, like a school of predators closing in on their prey. Captain Elias Vorn stood at the center, hands folded behind his back, his voice steady. Report. Lieutenant Kara, the tactical officer, swallowed hard as she read the data. First wave, 12 Dominion frigates and 4 cruisers. They are moving ahead of the main fleet. Estimated contact in 2 minutes. The bridge fell quiet for a moment. They all knew what this meant. The Armada was testing them, sending a smaller force to probe their defenses before the real storm arrived. Vorn's eyes remained calm, though his mind was racing. They underestimate us. That may be the one advantage we have. He nodded once. Target the lead cruiser. All weapons ready. Let's give them a welcome they will not forget. The battle begins. The Dominion frigates opened fire first. Streams of plasma and energy beams lit up the void, crossing the distance between fleets in glowing arcs. The Resolute's shields flared blue as the shots struck, vibrations shaking the decks. Shields at 90% called out Ensign Hale. Steady, Vorn said. The crew held their breath as the first volley ended. The Resolute's rail lances charged, glowing bright white as magnetic coils reached their peak. Fire, Vorn ordered. The ship shuddered as two massive slugs launched into the darkness. A heartbeat later, one of the Dominion cruisers exploded in a blinding flash, torn apart by sheer kinetic force. Fragments of metal scattered like shards of glass. The crew gasped. They had seen it in drills, but in real battle, the power was overwhelming. Direct hit, Kara shouted. Enemy cruiser destroyed. Cheers echoed through the bridge, but Vorn raised his hand. Stay focused. This is only the beginning. The Dominion frigate scattered, panicked by the sudden destruction of their cruiser. The Resolute pivoted slowly, its gravity cannons activating. Twin beams of distorted light shot out, locking onto another frigate. The enemy ship twisted unnaturally as its shields bent under crushing force. Then it collapsed inward, torn apart as if the void itself had swallowed it. Another Dominion ship was gone. Fear in the Armada on the bridge of the Cravalon. Admiral Zarin leaned forward, his glowing eyes narrowing. He had expected resistance, but not this. 2 ships gone already? He growled. His officers shifted nervously around him. This human battleship, it is stronger than the reports said, muttered one of his advisors. Zarin's claws tapped against the arm of his command throne. He could see the hesitation spreading among the first wave. The humans had struck fast and hard, and now the Dominion frigates were scattering like frightened animals. Pathetic, Zarin snapped. Regroup them. Send in the next wave, 6 cruisers supported by destroyers. We will crush this vessel with sheer weight. Even so, a shadow of doubt crept into his mind. This human ship was not normal. Holding the line, the Resolute rocked under another barrage. Plasma fire washed against its shields, shaking the hull. Panels sparked and alarms rang. Shields down to 75%, Hale shouted. Engineering, reroute auxiliary power to forward shields, Vorn ordered. The ship steadied as fresh energy poured into its defenses. Vorn's gaze shifted to the new incoming ships. 6 cruisers and 8 destroyers closing fast. This would be harder. Bring us around, Vorn commanded. Keep the rail lances on the largest targets. Target cruisers first. The Resolute moved like a mountain, slow but unstoppable, rotating to face the next wave. The first volley came. Enemy weapons hammered the ship. Shields flickered dangerously, dropping to 60%. But before panic could spread, the Resolute struck back. 3 rail lances fired in unison. 1 slug missed, streaking past harmlessly. But 2 found their mark. A Dominion cruiser's entire midsection ripped apart, while another lost its engines and spun helplessly into the void. 2 down, Kara shouted. The destroyers swarmed closer, spitting fire. Their speed made them harder to hit, and they darted around the Resolute like angry insects. Point defense is active, Vorn ordered. Dozens of smaller turrets lit up along the Resolute's hull, spraying streams of rapid-fire slugs. 1 destroyer shattered under the barrage, then another. Still, the enemy pressed on. Inside the ship, the crew fought exhaustion and fear. Engineers patched failing systems. Medics treated injured crew members thrown about by impacts. But no one abandoned their post. They knew the truth. If the Resolute fell, the colonies behind them would be defenseless. A moment of brilliance. The battle grew desperate. 3 Dominion destroyers closed in from the flank, slipping past the main guns. They opened fire, their plasma bolts striking the Resolute's side. Armor cracked, alarms blared, and the deck trembled violently. Hull breach in Section 9, an officer shouted. Vorn gritted his teeth. The destroyers were too close for the rail lances. They had to use something else. Kara, he said quickly, prepare the gravity cannon, lock onto their formation. She hesitated only for a moment before nodding. Aye, Captain. Targeting now. The massive gravity cannon roared. A wave of warped space burst forth, dragging the 3 destroyers toward one another like toys pulled by an invisible hand. Their pilots panicked, struggling to escape, but the force was too strong. The ships collided violently, their hulls crushing together before detonating in a chain of explosions. The crew of the Resolute erupted into cheers. Against impossible odds, they had turned disaster into victory. Vorn allowed himself the faintest smile. Good work, all of you, but the fight is not over. The frozen Armada back on the Cravalon, Admiral Zarin's rage grew. He had lost more ships than he cared to count. The human battleship was bleeding, but it refused to fall. Worse, his own fleet was hesitating. The Dominion had always conquered with ease. Their enemies usually broke in minutes, but here was one ship holding back waves of warships. Fear began to creep through the alien armada. Crews whispered of the human monster ship that tore cruisers apart with single shots. For the first time in generations, a Dominion fleet hesitated to advance. Ziran slammed his clawed hand down on his command chair. "Fools, do not fear them. It is only one ship. Press the attack." But even as he shouted, he knew the truth. The humans had done something none had managed in centuries. They had shaken the Dominion's confidence. The cost of defiance hours passed as wave after wave clashed. The Resolute's hull was scorched and cracked, shields flickering dangerously. Casualties mounted. Dozens of crew members were injured and sections of the ship had been sealed off, but the Armada was bleeding too. 10 cruisers, 15 destroyers, and countless frigates were gone. One battleship against many, yet the humans had made the impossible happen. On the bridge, Captain Vorn stood tall despite the exhaustion weighing on him. His uniform was torn, his hands burned from sparks, but his voice never wavered. "We hold," he said firmly. "As long as this ship flies, humanity stands." The crew answered with one voice, "Aye, Captain." The standoff at last, the battle slowed. The Dominion ships pulled back slightly, regrouping near their flagship. The Resolute floated in the center of wreckage, its hull scarred, its engines glowing faintly but still alive. Neither side moved. The Dominion Armada, so used to easy victories, had frozen. Their confidence shattered, they hesitated to press forward. The human battleship, though battered, stood unbroken. For a long moment the void was silent again. Captain Vorn looked at the battlefield. Around him floated the ruins of alien ships burning quietly in the darkness. His own vessel groaned under the strain, but it remained defiant. "They thought us weak," Vorn said quietly. "Now they know better." The crew exchanged weary but proud smiles. They had survived the first clash, and though they knew more battles would come, one truth had already been written into the stars. Humanity would not kneel. The battle was over, but the silence that followed was heavier than the sound of weapons. The void between the Dominion fleet and the human battleship was filled with wreckage. Burning fragments of cruisers, shattered destroyers, drifting debris that once carried proud alien banners. In the middle of that graveyard floated the HSS Resolute, battered but still alive. Its shields flickered weakly, its hull scorched and torn, but its engines glowed with stubborn light. Against hundreds it had not fallen, and on the other side the great Dominion Armada, the force that had crushed dozens of civilizations, now held its position. They did not charge. They did not finish the battle. They simply waited, caught between fury and fear. Shaken confidence on the Cravalon, Admiral Ziran's command throne felt heavier than ever. He sat motionless, eyes glowing faintly, claws gripping the armrests as he stared at the tactical display. His officers spoke nervously around him, but their words blended into a blur. The facts were undeniable. One human battleship had destroyed more Dominion ships in a single battle than some wars had cost in years. The Cravalon itself had not yet fired, but already the Admiral could sense the tremors of hesitation spreading through his fleet. "They should be ashes," Ziran whispered to himself. "One ship cannot hold against us." And yet, his advisors looked uneasy. "Admiral, morale is dropping. Many crews fear this human vessel. They speak of it as if it were cursed." "Cursed?" Ziran growled, but he heard the same fear in his own voice. He had always believed the Dominion was invincible. Now, for the first time, doubt touched him. Aboard the Resolute, inside the Resolute, the atmosphere was tense but proud. Crew members worked tirelessly to repair damage. Engineers patched the torn hull with emergency plating, while medics treated the wounded in crowded bays. The smell of burnt circuits and scorched metal filled the air. But beneath it was something stronger: defiance. On the bridge, Captain Elias Vorn stood with weary eyes, scanning reports. He had hardly slept in 2 days, but his voice remained calm. "Status?" he asked. Lieutenant Kara, her uniform torn from shrapnel, replied steadily. "Shields are at 40% and recharging slowly. 2 rail lances offline. Engines stable, but secondary coils are overheating. Casualties, 23 dead, 70 wounded." The words were heavy, but the captain nodded. "We still stand. That is what matters." The crew around him straightened at those words. They were exhausted, but their captain's calm gave them strength. Dominion debate back on the Cravalon. A storm of arguments raged among the Dominion high officers. One commander slammed his fist against the table. "We must retreat. The human battleship bleeds us with every wave. To press further is madness." Another hissed, scales glittering under the light. "Retreat? From one ship? That would be shame eternal. We must destroy it, whatever the cost." The council split. Some wanted to withdraw, regroup, and study the humans from afar. Others demanded immediate destruction to erase the humiliation. Admiral Zarin listened in silence. His pride demanded attack, but a whisper of reason held him back. He knew his crews were shaken. If they threw themselves into another wave and failed, the entire Armada might collapse into panic. At last he raised his claw for silence. "Enough, we will hold position. No retreat, no advance. We study them first, then we decide." It was not courage, nor was it defeat, it was hesitation, something the Dominion had not known in centuries. Human strategy on the Resolute, Captain Vorn studied the frozen enemy fleet. He understood what had happened. "They are afraid," he said quietly to his officers. The bridge crew exchanged surprised glances. The Dominion Armada still outnumbered them greatly. How could such a force be afraid of one battered battleship? But Vorn explained, "They have always won easily. They have never met resistance that hurt them. Now their confidence is broken. That is why they hesitate," Kara frowned. "But if they regroup, they could overwhelm us." "True," Vorn said. "Which is why we will not wait for them to recover. We will strike first, carefully, and keep them off balance." His officers nodded, determination shining in their tired eyes. The humans had learned something vital. Courage could wound even the strongest enemy. The ambush at the rings the next day, the Dominion tested the humans again. A formation of cruisers advanced cautiously, skirting the edge of the battlefield. They moved toward the gas giant nearby, hoping to draw the human ship out. But Captain Vorn had already planned for this. "Helm," he said, "take us into the planet's rings. We'll use them as cover." The Resolute slipped into the dense field of ice and rock orbiting the gas giant. Massive chunks of frozen stone drifted around them, reflecting light and scattering enemy sensors. The human crew maneuvered carefully, weaving the giant ship through the maze of debris. The Dominion cruisers followed, cautious but confident. They believed the rings would trap the humans. Then the Resolute struck. Rail lances fired from behind the cover of ice, slamming into two cruisers before they even realized the humans had turned. Both ships exploded, their wreckage scattering among the rocks. The others panicked, weapons firing wildly, but every shot was blocked by drifting debris. The Resolute emerged like a predator from shadow, its gravity cannon tearing apart a third cruiser. The survivors fled back to the Armada. The message was clear. The humans were not prey to be hunted. They were hunters themselves. Growing fear word spread quickly through the Dominion fleet. The humans had used the planet itself as a weapon, turning nature into their ally. Crews whispered that the human battleship fought with the universe on its side, that it bent the void itself to strike. Superstition grew. Some believed the humans had stolen ancient power. Others feared they were not newcomers but something older pretending to be young. Admiral Zarin crushed these whispers with threats, but even he could not silence fear. He felt it in the way his officers looked at the displays and the tremor in their voices. The Armada, once unstoppable, was frozen by doubt. Standoff at the giant, the next encounter came above the gas giant itself. The Cravalon moved forward, its massive silhouette dwarfing the smaller Dominion ships. Across the void, the Resolute faced it, still scarred but unbroken. For hours, the two flagships stared at one another. Neither side fired. The Dominion fleet waited for Zarin's order, but he gave none. The humans watched, ready but cautious. It was a strange duel of silence. Both sides knew that the next move could decide the war. On the bridge of the Resolute, young crew members whispered nervously, "Why aren't they attacking?" Captain Vorn answered softly, "Because they fear what might happen if they do." He knew the truth. The Dominion Armada, with all its numbers, was paralyzed. Their pride fought against their fear, and in that conflict, they could not move. Humanity's message realizing the moment's importance, Vorn made a bold decision. "Open a wideband transmission," he ordered. Static filled the speakers as the signal stretched across the void. Then Vorn's calm voice echoed, not only to the Cravalon but to every Dominion ship in range. "This is Captain Elias Vorn of the human battleship Resolute. You came here believing we would kneel. You believed we were weak, but you have seen the truth. One ship stands against your armada, and still it stands. If you continue, we will fight to the last, and every step forward will cost you blood." His words rolled across the fleet. The translation systems carried them into dozens of alien tongues. Every Dominion crew member heard the human voice, steady and unbroken. On the Cravalon, Admiral Zirin's officers shifted uncomfortably. For the first time, an enemy's words carried weight in their hearts. A wounded Titan. The Resolute was strong but not invincible. Deep inside its hull, systems were failing. Engines groaned, weapons overheated, and the wounded lay in rows, their moans echoing through medical bays. Vorn knew they could not fight forever. But he also knew that they had achieved something greater than simple survival. They had forced the Dominion to pause, to hesitate. That hesitation was victory in itself. The retreat at last, the impossible happened. Admiral Zirin, his pride broken by doubt and fear, gave the order no one had expected. "Pull back," he said quietly. His officers froze. "Admiral." "Retreat?" "Yes," Zirin growled. "Withdraw the fleet. This human battleship is not worth the losses. We will return later, better prepared." And so the great Dominion Armada turned slowly, engines flaring as ship after ship slipped back into faster-than-light corridors. The void cleared, leaving only wreckage, silence, and the lone figure of the Resolute. On the human ship's bridge, cheers erupted. Exhausted crew members hugged one another, tears streaming down their faces. Against all odds, they had forced the invincible Dominion to retreat. Captain Vorn allowed himself a deep breath. His voice, steady as ever, carried across the bridge. "We are not finished. This is only the beginning. But today, humanity has proven itself. A galaxy changed far beyond the battlefield. News spread like wildfire. Traders whispered of a single human battleship that had frozen an empire's armada. Captains told tales in hushed voices, stories of defiance and impossible courage. Across the galaxy, species that had long feared the Dominion began to wonder. Could the humans be different? Could they stand where others had fallen? And within the Dominion itself, doubt festered. For the first time in centuries, they had faced an enemy that did not break. The name of the human battleship Resolute would be remembered, not just as a ship but as a warning. The battlefield was silent now. Where once the great Dominion Armada had hovered, filling space with the power of its thousands of warships, now there was only emptiness. They had retreated, leaving behind wreckage, fire, and the scars of a fight they had not expected to lose. And in the middle of that quiet void floated the HSS Resolute. The mighty human battleship, though battered and scarred, still stood unbroken. Its glowing engines hummed softly, its weapons cooled slowly, and its wounded crew carried on with steady hands. For the first time in history, a single human ship had forced an empire to turn away. The weight of victory inside the bridge of the Resolute. The crew was exhausted, but their eyes shone with pride. Men and women leaned over their stations, sweat dripping from their brows, uniforms torn, yet none dared leave their posts. Captain Elias Vorn stood at the center. His dark uniform was scorched in several places, and his face was lined with fatigue. But his voice carried calm strength. "Damage report?" he asked. Lieutenant Kara, still steady despite her wounds, replied, "Hull breaches patched, but we cannot take another hit of that scale. Shields recharging slowly, engines holding. Weapon systems at 40% capacity. Medical bays are full, but doctors are managing." Her words were heavy, yet when she finished there was silence. All eyes turned to the captain. Vorn looked at his people, his family in this moment, and gave a simple nod. "We have done what no one thought possible. The Dominion is gone. You should be proud." A ripple of relief and pride spread through the bridge. For the first time in days, some even allowed themselves to smile. Mourning the fallen, but victory had come with a cost. The lower decks carried the bodies of those who had fallen. 23 brave souls who had fought and died to keep the ship alive. In the medical bays, dozens more lay wounded, some clinging to life. The crew gathered in silence in the main hangar, where the dead had been laid with honor beneath the flag of Earth. Their captain stood before them, his voice deep but gentle. "They gave their lives so that we might live. They fought knowing the odds. They fought knowing the price. And because of them, humanity stands today. No one spoke. The crew bowed their heads, honoring their friends. Some wept quietly. Others clenched their fists in silent promise. At last, Vorn gave the command. Set their bodies into the stars. Let them rest where they fought, where they proved to the galaxy what it means to be human. The hangar doors opened, and the silent forms drifted into the void, wrapped in light. They became part of the stars, eternal and unbroken. Signals across the galaxy beyond the battlefield. Signals raced across space. Traders, smugglers, scouts, and hidden observers all carried the same story. The invincible Dominion had been stopped. In shadowed cantinas, alien captains whispered of the battle. The humans did it, they said. One ship against thousands. In hidden colonies that had long suffered under the Dominion, hope stirred. If humans can fight them, maybe we can too. On neutral worlds, ambassadors and spies scrambled to learn more about this new race. Who were the humans? How had they built such a ship? Were they a rising power or something far older in disguise? Everywhere one name spread like wildfire, Resolute. The ship became more than steel. It became a symbol. Inside the Dominion, but while hope spread across the galaxy, inside the Dominion there was silence. The High Council of the Terran Dominion gathered in their great chamber. Tall banners hung from the walls, glowing with symbols of conquest. For centuries, those banners had meant victory. Now for the first time they felt hollow. Reports from Admiral Zran were read aloud. They spoke of a single human ship that had resisted wave after wave. They spoke of hesitation, of retreat, of shame. The counselors hissed in anger and disbelief. Some demanded punishment for Zran. Others demanded immediate war to crush the humans before their legend grew. But none could ignore the truth. If one human battleship could wound them so deeply, what would a fleet of such ships mean? Fear crept into the hearts of the rulers. Fear of a race they had once called prey. The captain's reflection back on the Resolute, Captain Vorn stood alone in his quarters, staring at the stars. The glow of the battlefield's wreckage still lingered outside, silent reminders of what had been lost and won. He felt the weight of his choices heavy on his shoulders. He had led his crew into the jaws of an empire, and somehow they had survived. But he knew survival was only the beginning. The Dominion would return. Stronger, wiser, more determined. And humanity would need more than courage when that day came. His reflection in the glass showed a tired man, older than his years. But his eyes were steady. He had no regret. Returned to Earth weeks later, the Resolute limped back into human space. The journey was long, marked by constant repairs and endless care for the wounded. But when the ship finally arrived near Earth, the sight was unforgettable. Hundreds of civilian vessels had gathered, waiting for them. Small ships, freighters, even private craft, all filled with people who wanted to see the heroes with their own eyes. As the Resolute entered orbit, a cheer rose from Earth itself, carried across the planet and into space. Humanity had faced the strongest empire in the galaxy, and had not fallen. The Council of Earth, the United Earth Council, met in emergency session. Leaders from every nation, scientists, admirals, and ambassadors filled the grand chamber. And at the center, Captain Elias Vorn stood, his uniform newly repaired but still carrying the marks of battle. He spoke simply, without flourish. The Dominion will come again. What we faced was not the end, only the beginning. They will not forgive their defeat. They will return with greater force. The council was silent. The truth of his words could not be denied. But we have also learned something, Vorn continued. They can be stopped. Their confidence is broken. The galaxy now knows we are not prey. But if we are to survive the next war, we must prepare. We must build more ships, stronger fleets, united purpose. Only then will humanity stand secure. His words struck deep. For years, humanity had seen itself as a small race, new to the stars. Now they began to see themselves differently, not as weak explorers, but as a people capable of shaping history. A symbol for all news of the Resolute's stand spread further. On distant worlds, alien slaves whispered the name with hope. On trading stations, merchants painted the ship's silhouette on their walls. Even in Dominion space, some dared to speak of it in secret. As a story of defiance, the humans had become a symbol, not just for themselves, but for all who longed for freedom from the Dominion's chains. The crew's bond for the crew of the Resolute. The journey had changed them forever. They were no longer just officers and engineers, soldiers and medics. They were a family, bound by fire and blood. Lieutenant Kara, once a quiet navigator, now walked with pride, her voice steady with authority. The engineers joked of how many times they had patched the ship back together, calling her a beast with a human heart. The wounded spoke of returning to service, of fighting again when the time came. They knew the galaxy would remember them. But more importantly, they remembered one another. Whisper of the future months later, new construction yards rose above Earth. Plans for more battleships spread across human colonies. Scientists studied every scrap of data from the Resolute's battle, determined to make the next generation even stronger. The Dominion was still vast, still dangerous. But the balance of fear had shifted. In the quiet of space, Captain Vorn looked out once more at the stars. His voice was soft, but it carried the promise of a future. They thought us weak. They thought us prey. But we showed them the truth. We are resolute, and we will never bow. A new legend, and so the story of the Resolute became legend, not only in human hearts, but across the galaxy. A story of courage against impossible odds, of one ship that froze an empire. Children on Earth grew up hearing the tale. Alien refugees whispered it to one another in dark corners, clinging to hope. Even Dominion officers, in the privacy of their chambers, could not forget the fear they had felt. It was the beginning of something greater. The beginning of a new chapter for humanity. The age of explorers was ending. The age of defenders, fighters, and builders had begun, and at the heart of it all was one truth, carved into the memory of the stars.